All right, welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because as of today, June 9th, 2026, we're literally witnessing a massive fundamental architectural shift happening on the internet right beneath our fingertips. We're talking about the upcoming launch of UID version 2.8. This is a release that completely rewrites the rules for how autonomous AI systems exist and operate online. If you want to understand the future of digital identity, you are in exactly the right place. So, let's look at the core problem.
So think about this. How does an AI prove it's not a malicious bot? It sounds kind of like a philosophical riddle, right? But honestly, it's the absolute most pressing infrastructure problem of our time. Right now, when an AI agent triggers a high-frequency loop of API calls to execute complex tasks, traditional security frameworks just don't know what to do with it. Our legacy systems either collapse into what we call consent fatigue, or they just outright block the agent, assuming it's a malicious attack.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because of that limitation we just talked about, autonomous AI systems have been forced to operate in this incredibly messy state of technical limbo. They become what we call ghost agents. Basically, to get anything done, these agents have to borrow human browser cookies, mask themselves behind human API keys, and piggyback on identity management systems that were built exclusively for humans. Essentially, our absolute most advanced AI currently has to wear stolen human passports just to navigate the web. And, that workaround is incredibly dangerous. We're looking at deepfakes, hijacked APIs, and that consent fatigue we mentioned earlier. Legacy human systems are literally breaking under AI scale. Relying on fragile, human-centric systems to manage a hyperfast autonomous AI is just a massive cybersecurity vulnerability, not to mention a total GDPR liability. It creates friction, it leaves untraceable bots running rampant, and it's just completely unsustainable. We absolutely needed a structural fix.
Which brings us to introducing UID version 2.8.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast. This upcoming standard introduces a paradigm-shifting framework that fundamentally grants AI agents their own native digital identities. Under the old setup, the authentication method relied on centralized database lookups and exposed API keys. That meant GDPR liability was incredibly high because all those credentials were just sitting on corporate servers. But under the UIID v2.8 side, it uses stateless, cryptographic, zero-knowledge proofs. Liability drops all the way to zero because credentials live in a biometrically secured vault. It's a complete night-and-day transformation. Now, I want to pause here for just a second to clear up a really common technical confusion. We are not talking about standard UUIDs, with two U's. Those are merely passive 128-bit random strings used strictly for database indexing. What we're looking at here is UIID, Universal Intelligent Identity. This is an active, self-authenticating cryptographic protocol that is purpose-built for autonomous systems. Functionally, they are entirely different things. By shifting to this active protocol, UID v2.8 operates on what the source material calls the zero data, zero risk principle. Instead of registering traditional accounts, agents act as self-authenticating entities with their own dynamic digital passports. This proves exactly what the agent is and what it's authorized to do, meaning we completely eliminate the need to expose sensitive databases or maintain those highly vulnerable API credentials on corporate servers. Let's move into our next section, Anchor of Accountability, the Trust Core.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Giving an AI the power to just create its own identity at will, doesn't that sound like a recipe for absolute, untraceable bot chaos? Well, to keep these agents from becoming rogue entities, the standard introduces the Trust Core framework. A Trust Core is a master cryptographic anchor owned by a verified human or an enterprise. An agent's UUID doesn't just float off into the void. It's securely tethered back to this verified deployer, so there is always a clear line of accountability.
So, the crucial point is how this tethering actually works without completely compromising privacy. And that is through zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs. Through these ZKPs, the agent can present its unique UIID to grab temporary permissions or execute transactions. It proves to the platform that it is authorized by a verified trust core, but it does this without ever once exposing the master identity or the personal data of its human deployer. Its privacy and accountability perfectly balanced.
Which leads us to grab, go, and scale.
This is arguably the most anticipated aspect of the v2.8 release, the highly fluid, action-oriented dynamics of the interface. This is where we see just how fast and autonomous these agents can truly be. An agent might be spun up for a really short-term workflow, let's say scraping data or optimizing an ad campaign. Instead of waiting for a human admin to provision access, the agent dynamically fetches and claims a clean UID right from the infrastructure layer.
It uses that identity to get the job done, and then the very moment the task is completed, it simply discards or cycles that identity. It's incredibly fast, totally seamless, and entirely autonomous. And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of a stateless, decentralized validation loop. As the source says, agents can negotiate trust dynamically in the middle of a process. Just imagine that for a second. An agent shifts from a low-security task, like drafting an email text, to a high-security task, like transferring company funds. Under v2.8, the agent doesn't need to stop and ask you for a new human login. It autonomously escalates its validation status right on the fly, using its UID compliance layer. Let's look at cryptographic accountability. Because let's be real, an identity is only as good as the accountability of its actions, right? UID v2.8 natively integrates automated content provenance directly into the identity layer through a deep cryptographic asset binding. It works in 3 steps. First, the agent generates an asset, maybe that's a report or a code snippet. Second, the agent immediately signs that asset's metadata using its unique UID. And third, a secure watermark is permanently embedded into the output data loop. This isn't just some crude visual stamp you can crop out. It is literally baked into the math of the file. So why should you care about this? Well, any downstream consumer or platform can now audit that content. You can trace that cryptographic watermark right back to the generating agent's UID, and you can verify the validating trust core behind it. This gives us complete, foolproof transparency. Moving forward, we're finally going to have a systemic, verifiable way to know exactly what content was human-made versus what was agent-generated. Let's move to and see how this builds to a single fundamental shift. The upcoming release of UID v2.8 marks the end of the ghost agent era. By moving away from fragile human sessions to robust, self-authenticating UIDs, we are finally giving AI agents a legitimate, verifiable seat at the digital table. They can securely grab identities, verify themselves, and watermark their output, operating with a level of safety that was previously just impossible. The era of agent-native identity has officially arrived. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. With AI now carrying its own verifiable passport, how will this transparent infrastructure change the internet you use every single day? Think about how you consume media, how you interact with software, and how you trust the digital world around you. The entire foundation is shifting. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.